Most women think they understand men, but when it comes to Sigma males, they're often dead wrong. Sigmas don't play by the rules. They don't chase validation, and their mindset is almost impossible to predict. That's why they're so misunderstood, and why women are often left confused, intrigued, and even intimidated. In this video, we're breaking down the 7 things Sigma males wish women knew about them, the truths that explain their silence, their independence, and their mysterious way of moving through relationships. By the end, you'll see why being with a Sigma isn't about trying to change him. If you want to master the Sigma mindset and see why women secretly respect it, make sure you stick around to the end. And before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to UltraWise and hit the like button, because the truth I'm about to share isn't what you usually hear. They crave respect more than attention. One of the most misunderstood traits of Sigma males is that they don't crave attention the way most people assume men do. In fact, attention often bores them because they know how superficial it usually is. Anyone can get attention by making noise, showing off, or playing games. But respect? That's something entirely different. And that's what a Sigma male is after. For a Sigma, respect isn't about titles, status, or popularity. It's about being recognized for their authenticity, their independence, and the strength of their choices. They'd rather have one person genuinely respect their boundaries and integrity than 100 people shower them with shallow compliments. Attention fades quickly, but respect is lasting, and Sigmas know it can't be faked. This is why you'll rarely see them chasing likes, begging for approval, or molding themselves to fit someone else's expectations. They'd rather stand apart and be misunderstood than compromise who they are just to be accepted. Their entire psychology is built on self-respect first, which naturally makes them demand the same from others. When women realize this difference, it often shocks them. At first, they might mistake his lack of need for attention as arrogance or coldness, but over time, they see that his focus has never been on being the loudest in the room. It has always been on being the most consistent, the most disciplined, and the most unshakable in his values. And here's the part that really sets Sigma males apart. Respect from them has to be mutual. If they sense you don't value them, they won't argue or demand recognition. They'll simply walk away. Because in their world, attention means nothing without respect, and they'll never settle for anything less. Silence doesn't mean disinterest. One of the biggest misconceptions about Sigma males is that their silence equals disinterest. To most people, silence is uncomfortable. They fill every gap in conversation with small talk, nervous laughter, or meaningless noise. But a Sigma? He doesn't feel the need to prove his presence through constant chatter. His silence has purpose, and it rarely means he doesn't care. When a Sigma male goes quiet, it's usually because he's observing, processing, or analyzing. His mind is working far more than his mouth. He notices details, absorbs energy, and connects dots others miss. What looks like disinterest from the outside is actually one of his greatest strengths. The ability to think before speaking and to let others reveal themselves. Women often misread this quiet as emotional distance. They may assume he's bored, detached, or unavailable, but the reality is the opposite. When a Sigma is silent around you, he's often reading between the lines of your words, picking up on your energy, and deciding whether you're genuine. Silence, for him, is not empty space. It's data collection. The power in this silence is also psychological. Most people aren't used to someone who doesn't rush to fill the void, so they end up oversharing, exposing insecurities, or showing motives they intended to hide. That's how Sigma males flip silence into power. They create a space where truth, slips out naturally. Here's the brutal truth. If a Sigma male is truly disinterested, he won't just go silent, he'll leave. His silence, when he stays present, is a sign he's still engaged, still watching, still evaluating. And if you misunderstand that silence, you'll miss the deeper connection he's offering in his own subtle way. They value depth over drama. If there's one thing Sigma males have zero patience for, it's unnecessary drama. In a world where gossip, emotional games, and surface-level distractions dominate, they stand apart by craving depth in people, in conversations, and in life itself. To a Sigma, shallow conflict and emotional theatrics aren't signs of passion or connection. They're red flags that drain energy and waste time. When a Sigma engages with someone, he's looking for substance. He wants conversations that expand his perspective, connections that challenge him to grow, and experiences that feel meaningful. Drama, on the other hand, is the opposite of everything he values. It's chaos without purpose. That's why women often regret losing a Sigma. They realize too late that his refusal to get caught in petty arguments wasn't indifference, but discipline. This preference for depth also shapes how Sigma males handle relationships. Instead of falling into cycles of toxic conflict or jealousy, they step back and evaluate whether the bond has real value. If it does, they'll invest with unmatched loyalty. If it doesn't, they'll cut ties with quiet precision. They'd rather be alone than waste energy on chaos disguised as love or friendship. What shocks most people is that Sigmas don't just say they value depth, they live it. They read between the lines, notice patterns, and sense when someone's words don't match their actions. They filter out the noise and zero in on the truth. And because they are rare in this way, losing them often feels like losing the one person who truly saw through the distractions to the core of who you were. Here's the hard truth. Women often confuse drama with intensity, but Sigmas know better. Depth is rare, and once they've given it, they won't stay where it isn't respected. Independence isn't coldness. One of the most misunderstood traits of Sigma males is their independence. To outsiders, it can look like coldness, distance, or even arrogance. But the truth is, their independence doesn't come from a lack of care. It comes from a commitment to self-respect. A Sigma doesn't cling, doesn't beg, and doesn't rely on constant reassurance because he's built a life that doesn't collapse when people come and go. To women, this can be confusing at first. Many are used to men who constantly seek validation, who measure their worth by how much attention they get. With a Sigma, that neediness is absent. He can love deeply, but he never loses himself in the process. His independence means that while he values connection, he doesn't need it to survive. And that strength, while magnetic, can also feel intimidating because it challenges the usual dynamics most people are familiar with. This is why some mistake his independence for emotional detachment. They assume that because he can walk alone, he doesn't care. But here's the paradox. A Sigma's ability to be independent actually makes his loyalty more valuable. When he chooses to stay, it's not out of dependence or fear of being alone. It's because he truly wants to be there. That choice, free of desperation, is what makes his presence so powerful. Independence also protects him from manipulation. He won't be trapped by guilt trips, games, or threats of abandonment because he knows he can stand tall with or without anyone. This unshakable self-reliance is what keeps him from being controlled and what ultimately makes him both feared and respected. So no, his independence isn't coldness. It's the deepest form of strength. A reminder that his world doesn't revolve around anyone else. But when you're part of it, you know it's by choice, not necessity. And that realization is exactly why women regret taking it for granted once it's gone. Boundaries are non-negotiable. For Sigma males, boundaries aren't just preferences, they're lines carved in stone. Once they draw that line, it doesn't move for anyone, no matter how close the person is. To many women, this can feel harsh or even inflexible, but it's one of the strongest traits that sets Sigma men apart from others. Where most people bend their limits to keep the peace or avoid conflict, a Sigma refuses to sacrifice his values just to please someone else. When a woman encounters this, it can be both frustrating and eye-opening. At first, she might see it as stubbornness or arrogance. Why won't he just give in? But over time, she realizes that these unshakable boundaries are actually a form of strength and self-respect. A Sigma doesn't say no lightly, but when he does, it's final. He doesn't play games, doesn't backtrack, and doesn't compromise his principles just to avoid tension, and that consistency is rare in a world where most people fold under pressure. The impact of this is powerful. Women quickly discover that manipulation tactics, guilt trips, silent treatments, or emotional pressure don't work on a Sigma male. Instead of caving in, he pulls back even further, reinforcing his independence. This forces people around him to either respect his limits or lose access to his presence. And while this can sting in the moment, it also builds a deep respect over time, because women realize that a man who won't compromise his boundaries also won't compromise his integrity. Ironically, this is where regret often creeps in. When a woman tests those boundaries and pushes too far, she finds out the hard way that once trust is broken, the Sigma doesn't negotiate. He leaves. What she mistook for rigidity was actually a sign of loyalty to himself. And once that's gone, so is he. In the end, Sigma males prove that boundaries are not barriers to love, but the foundation of it. They teach that respect begins with self-respect, and that anyone who can't honor those limits doesn't deserve a place in their world. They don't chase, they attract. One of the most shocking realities about Sigma males is that they never chase, not attention, not validation, not even people they're interested in. Where most men are conditioned to pursue, to prove themselves, to constantly show effort in order to earn connection, Sigmas flip the script entirely. They know their value runs deep, and because of that, they live by a very different law. Attraction beats pursuit every time. When a Sigma enters a room, he doesn't flood it with noise or demand recognition. He stands still, and people notice him without knowing why. It's not arrogance, it's presence. His quiet confidence, his independence, and his refusal to cling create a magnetic pull that's far more powerful than chasing could ever be. Women, in particular, feel this more than anyone else. They're used to men competing, begging for attention, or trying to prove their worth. But with a Sigma, the absence of pursuit sparks curiosity. Suddenly, they're the ones wondering, why isn't he chasing me like everyone else? This reversal of roles creates both respect and intrigue. It shifts the dynamic because when a Sigma doesn't chase, he forces others to question their own worth. His silence becomes a challenge, and his indifference feels like a mirror reflecting back the games that usually work on everyone else. That's why women often regret losing a Sigma, because his pull was never built on begging or pleading. It was built on mystery, self-respect, and strength. And here's the real twist. Sigmas don't need to chase, because they've mastered the art of alignment. They know that the right people, the right opportunities, and the right relationships come naturally to those who live authentically. By refusing to waste energy on empty pursuits, they attract people who value them for who they truly are, not for how hard they tried to impress. At the core, Sigma males prove a timeless truth. Chasing is for those who doubt their value, but attracting is for those who know it. And that's why the Sigma way always wins in the long run. Walking away is their final word. For most people, walking away is the last resort, something they do after endless arguments, explanations, or failed attempts at fixing the situation. But for Sigma males, walking away is not a weakness or a last option. It is the final word, the ultimate statement, and the clearest form of power they possess. When a Sigma decides to leave, it isn't temporary, it's permanent, silent, and absolute. This is what shocks people the most. They expect a fight, an explanation, or at least some emotional closure. But Sigmas don't give that satisfaction. They don't waste energy convincing anyone why they made their decision. They don't argue to prove their point. They simply withdraw, cutting off access to their presence, attention, and energy. And that absence speaks louder than any words ever could. Walking away for a Sigma is not about punishment. It's about self-respect. They understand that staying in a toxic environment, chasing someone who doesn't value them, or tolerating manipulation only drains their power. By leaving without explanation, they reclaim control of their life instantly. To the other person, it feels brutal, like a door slamming shut without warning. But to the Sigma, it feels liberating. The reason this final act stings so deeply is because people realize too late what they've lost. A Sigma's loyalty, depth, and presence are rare. When he's gone, the silence becomes haunting. The what-ifs replay in their mind, but the Sigma never looks back. His walking away isn't a pause, it's the closing chapter. And here's the brutal truth. When a Sigma leaves, he does so stronger, not weaker. He doesn't crumble or regret. He thrives. His silence becomes a permanent reminder to those who underestimated him, and his absence is felt far more than his words ever could have been. For a Sigma male, walking away isn't just an action, it's the ultimate verdict, one that needs no explanation, because once he's gone for good. At the end of the day, Sigma males don't waste time proving themselves with words. They live by actions, by principles, and by a code that doesn't bend for anyone. And while many misunderstand them as cold or distant, the truth is that their silence, their standards, and their independence are the very things that make them unforgettable. The brutal reality is this: once a Sigma male walks away, there's no coming back. He doesn't chase, he doesn't beg, and he doesn't explain. And that's why so many people, especially women, regret losing him. Because only after he's gone do they realize the rare value he carried all along. Now here's the question for you. Which of these 7 truths hit you the hardest? And do you think most people can really handle the Sigma mindset? Drop your answer in the comments, because I'd love to hear your take. If you connected with this video, hit that subscribe button and join me here on UltraWise. This is where we dive into the raw, unfiltered psychology of Sigma males and uncover the truths most people are too afraid to talk about. Until next time, stay silent, stay powerful, and stay Sigma.